And Mike, give me your official title. So, I mean, like, you're the big cheese of weather, but I don't think that's your official title.
Well, they call me the chief meteorologist. So let's go with chief meteorologist. Personally, I'm the weather guy.
Yeah. Right? Big cheese of weather.
I enjoy it. I've been doing it a long time. And CBS 47, Fox 30, Action News Jax, and it's all the weather all the time, as I like to say.
Yeah.
I love the weather. That's what brought me to TV. So as long as I can be talking weather, I enjoy my career.
All right. Now, you grew up in Iowa, correct?
I did. Little town in the middle of the Midwest.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the weather in Iowa is slightly different than the weather here in Florida. So can you kind of give us your journey of where you, because you graduated from Iowa State,
right?
Correct?
Yeah,
I believe that's what you told me.
Yeah.
You graduated from Iowa State. So what happens from that moment on? Like, okay, how do I make my journey work?
Right. Well, I wasn't certain what I was going to do. Actually, to be honest with you, I loved weather. I loved meteorology. I knew that. Had my degree in also was an earth science. I had a certification in earth science teaching. Okay. In Iowa, you have to be certified with whatever you teach. What a thought, huh? That's a pretty good idea that you might know what you're talking about, hopefully. And so I thought as at 22, 23 years old, I thought it's going to be very difficult for me probably to get right into the meteorology field. I'll start by hopefully paying the bills by teaching, which I did. I found a job right out of the right out of college in Des Moines, inner city Des Moines, Iowa, and taught earth science to high school students that were just a few years younger than me.
Yeah.
Not much younger. And then I got a part-time TV job in Des Moines within a few months. And they offered me full-time another year or so. And to me, that was the start of what I really wanted to do. And I did enjoy teaching. It was not easy. I mean, our teachers have a very difficult job. And I enjoyed it. It was remarkably fulfilling. I still hear from some students every once in a while.
That's wonderful.
And but then I took the full-time TV job in Des Moines, the NBC affiliate, where Ronald Reagan actually worked radio back in the day.
Oh.
And was there a couple of years. Then went to Cincinnati, Ohio for 11 years, which is where I met my beautiful wife. And then we came here 25 years ago. So we've been here 25 years. It's home, so it's great.
So, so Cincinnati was a stop.
Right.
Are you a Reds fan?
To a point. I mean, I didn't grow up in Cincinnati. I was there 11 years. Obviously, I rooted for him. I am a Reds fan to a point.
Okay.
But I grew up a Twins fan, if you must know.
Oh, okay. All right.
So,
that's
my dad took me to a Twins game when I was
interesting journey
young.
from
yeah, well, when you're in Iowa,
because Twins weren't so great in the 70s.
No. When you were in Iowa, you had to travel to go to pro sports, right?
Yeah,
so one of the first baseball game my dad took me to was the Twins, and you're right, Rod Carew played. It was he was the only thing the Twins had in the 70s, and so I grew up a Twins fan, and but obviously rooted for the Reds too when I was in Cincinnati.
Yeah, because I became a Reds fan because they were good in the 70s.
Yeah,
right.
Big Red Machine.
Big Red Machine, and that's how I became a Reds fan. But anytime anyone says Cincinnati, I was like, "You're a Reds fan." We're hard to find here.
That's true. And I did some work with Pete Rose, believe it or not, when I was there. And Johnny Bench, very philanthropic and accessible, was really awesome. Really good guy. So I had and Barry Larkin back, when he was a part of the days when they had that couple of years there when they were really good in the early 90s.
When they won in the 90s.
Right.
In 90. So we haven't won since then.
No. We made the playoffs this year, but that was about it.
Yeah,
so.
Then they got their ass kicked by the Dodgers.
Yes,
but Johnny Bench called in on Mike Davis and I had an Uncommon Ground radio show on our 1000th show, and Mike had set it up, didn't tell me. I'm a huge Johnny Bench fan, so I didn't believe it was him because we're on radio.
Right. You don't know.
And I'm just like busting his chops a little bit, like, because I thought it was a prank. And finally, I just go, all right, where was the baseball bunch filmed? And he said, Toledo. That's the weirdest question I've ever been asked. I was like, oh my gosh, it's really Johnny Bench. And I freaked out on the. He
is a really good guy.
Super nice guy. No,
yeah.
And he's signed in our little wall of fame out there. He sent me a picture because I'd sent him. Found out he likes to cook and I like to cook.
Yeah.
And so we exchanged. Johnny Bench and I exchanged some recipes.
That's hilarious. That's awesome.
Two old baseball guys exchanging recipes. So.
That sounds very much like Johnny.
Yeah. So
that's cool.
It was really, really fun. So when you get to Jacksonville, you're at CBS.
CBS and Fox.
You've been with them the entire time.
That's correct. Yeah.
So right now, you're the longest tenured weatherman
That's-
in our area.
That's
right?
a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm not old, just longest tenured.
Longest tenured. Longest tenured.
Which is funny because they're
We're
running
like Mike Tomlin in the NFL.
yeah, there you go. They're running that now as a promo. Something about it's not. They don't say longest tenured, but that's the idea. And every time I hear it, I'm like the oldest.
Yeah.
Just say the oldest.
But see, Mike Tomlin's that in the NFL, but
That's true.
But he's not the oldest.
No, that's true.
The oldest.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
So, at what point in like your career were you like, all right, this is the last move for me? Because I'm assuming.
Oh, that's a good question.
I'm assuming you're, in the business you're in, it's almost like, okay, I'm always making that next step.
Yeah,
I'm always making that next
No
step.
doubt.
And at some point in your life, you got to, this is my last step.
Yeah.
And I feel like you're there.
Yes.
And at what point did that actually take place for you?
Great question, because when we got here in 2002, it was a 3-year contract and a 3-year gig, we felt. They told me to come down here and try to build a foundation. And so almost 25 years later, obviously it's home. We're happy. And I would say, gosh, between 5 and 10 years into it, we felt like we liked Jacksonville a lot. We love the weather. It felt like home. It's big town, small town kind of thing. And our kids enjoyed it. And then you get to a point when, your kids are in going through school, there's a point where you don't want to move them, really, if you don't have to. So you get to that point, and then they get through school and they move off to college, and they're like, well, this is great. Now we're empty nesters, and
we lived without that money, and now we have it.
It's a pay raise. It's remarkable.
Blake, I'm still waiting for that pay raise.
Yeah, and we enjoy, and even better yet, we enjoy each other. We still have a good
like each other.
Yeah, we have a good relationship. We're having a blast. So I would say that click kind of started somewhere between 5 and 10 years into being here in Jacksonville, and we love it. I don't understand why people either don't love it, or give it a hard knock, because I think it's awesome here. I think it's great, and there's so many things to see. So many, any place, I've always said this, any place you go is what you make of it. We love it.
Yeah.
It's home.
So, and there's been a lot of talk, like we live on a coastline, and people are talking about climate change and stuff like that. And I know it's called something different politically correctly or whatever it is, and I'm rarely politically correct. How often do you have to handle questions like that? And how do you handle questions like that? Because the weather's changed through the centuries, and it's has cycles to it.
Sure. Yeah.
So how do you handle that question? Because it's almost turned political.
Yeah. Oh, it has.
On your side, it's on the scientific side.
Right.
So.
Well, that's a good question, and it comes up in every talk I do now. And I finally realized, because typically people, clubs and associations and companies, whatever it might be, that want me to talk about the weather, it's usually about the hurricane season, oftentimes is. And so I keep it on topic. I always keep these on topic. If they want whatever they want, that's my topic. But I realized 5 or 6 years ago, probably, that I can't do a talk without addressing climate change in one way, shape, or form. So I do now, typically at the back end of every presentation. Hopefully I've got time. And the way I do it is I'm very down the middle. And as I always try to emphasize, a thermometer is an inanimate object. It is not part of a political party. Yeah. It just measures temperature. And if it's cold, it's cold. Yeah, and if it's hot, it's hot.
It doesn't care if you have a D or an R. It doesn't matter.
No, yeah, right. Yeah. And so I try to emphasize that first and foremost, and then I'll throw in, depending on the talk and the crowd and their questions, 4 or 5 different slides on temperature and or rainfall and weather patterns, and not really try to comment on it directly. Let them draw their conclusion by looking at the data, which to me is very straightforward and very simple to do. And again, doesn't matter which side of the aisle you're on. It really doesn't make any sense to me that this is political. So I take a very pragmatic approach, I guess is what you'd say. And I've been asked by the station on and off, though not recently, to think about doing a climate change special, a 30-minute, maybe 1-hour documentary.
And give the real.
And that's how I would do it, is right down the middle. I would give the numbers, and I emphasize all the time to people, educate yourself. Understand it. Don't listen to one person or one single sound bite or some of the stuff out there is outrageous. Listen to the science, and common sense helps a lot.
Yeah.
And I'd have to think, after, we're now, what are we, almost 150 years into the industrial age, about, it seems logical to me that we've had some kind of impact, humanity has. And it's not just the United States, not just Florida, but that globally we have had an impact certainly on our environment, and most likely our atmosphere.
Yeah, definitely on the animals and the trees and the
pollution, the oceans. Oceans are a mess.
And one of the things that I've said is people are, along with that advancement, but also we're putting out fires when trees were wiped out the entire continent when a fire would hit, and we have more trees now than we ever have in the past. But it's all been relocated.
Sure, of course.
And that's what's happening with the animals. That's what's happening. And there's certain areas that it's really a pretty rough situation. So,
of course, sure it is. Yeah.
So in St. Johns County, we're growing, and we're pushing our animals tighter and tighter.
And that's a great example.
Yeah.
And we've had some environmental issues come up recently where construction has been brought up and proposed in places that we never thought anybody would consider allowing, let alone actually doing the construction. And thankfully, cooler heads prevailed, and people taking a stand made a difference. On both sides. You saw it on both sides coming together, and not just yelling and threatening, but negotiating and talking and debating, and then coming out on what seemed to be a resolution that made sense.
Yeah, like what almost happened with the state park situation.
Guana State Park's a great example.
That was pretty scary stuff. And I'm a proponent of, I was a former Parks and Recreation guy. I was the director here for a couple weeks. But I'm a preservation guy first, because land ownership's a real thing. You have ownership rights. And if you put it in preservation and you make it so difficult for these developers, it becomes better for our for our surroundings.
Sure.
And I'm I work for a developer too. So
yeah,
so I got both sides.
It's a two-edged sword.
I got both sides that I have to kind of struggle through.
But you probably use some common sense in that regard. That's my point on common sense.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make any sense. And if you drive down US 1, I just mentioned that is when we sat down. When you drive down US 1, the difference between now and 20 years ago is, it's an extra half-hour drive practically, and it's just been raised in many cases.
Well, and I said probably 20 years ago, I was like, oh, we're gonna be connected to Jacksonville, and we're pretty damn close right now. So it's another 15 years.
Yeah.
That drive down US 1, those little gaps that we got, besides like the 12-mile swamp, which is the preservation. Yeah. It's going to be pretty much connected at that point.
Arguably Jacksonville to St. Augustine to Daytona Beach.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true, because Palm Coast is growing just as fast as we are.
The beautiful drive down A1A. I don't know how long that's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we love that drive. Just take off on a Sunday and there's all those little mom and pop shops and little hole in the wall restaurants and bars that just have so much personality and are a blast. And of course, that's another story too, A1A and where our coastline really is.
Well, and thank goodness St. Johns County's done a very active role to save their portion of it. So hopefully the rest of the state does that going down. What's the one thing you love about the weather that just makes you happy to go to work every day? Give me like your perspective of the weather, because you have to look at it differently than everyone else.
Yeah, when it comes to weather, and the job is more than that. So there's other things that I do that I enjoy a lot. But when it comes to just the weather, the challenge of forecasting the weather, and it's a challenge. We're not going to be right every single day. The challenge of trying to forecast it is fascinating, and the change that can occur and does occur, and the reason why. And it can be something as simple as a rainbow or a sunrise or a sunset, beautiful sunrise driving down this morning. Those kinds of things to me fascinate me, and to be able to talk weather with people and explain things, or in some cases we don't have an explanation and never will, and that kind of stuff to me is pretty cool. I think everybody talks about Mark Twain said, everybody talks about the weather, but nobody can do anything about it, which is true. And so I enjoy talking about it, and I think it is fascinating. We have entered a new era of weather forecasting and what people think about it, which is interesting too, but in a place that I never thought I'd go in my career. But I do enjoy the change and the challenge of trying to forecast the weather.
And that was actually going to be one of my questions. When you first started, the technology has advanced so much.
Yeah.
Give me what you think your scale is. How accurate were you 30 years ago compared to where you are today? And still, it's still a very unpredictable.
Exactly.
It's predictions.
Exactly.
How much better do you think you've gotten since 22-year-old Mike Buresh to
just a few years later?
Yeah, a couple weeks later.
It is remarkable, the change and the advancements that we've made. Again, not perfect, but where we've really made the advancements is where it matters. A hurricane, a tornado, a flash flood, whatever kind of severe weather might be imminent, it rarely catches us completely off guard. Now, we can't control how that information is disseminated or how people are going to react to that information, and that is still a problem, is still an issue. But rarely is a storm of great magnitude going to just sneak up on us without any advance notice or any warning at all. And that, to me, is the biggest difference since the beginning of my career, when weather radar, there were very few in the entire country, and even fewer in the world. I got to work on one of the first operational Doppler radars in the world at the National Weather Service in Oklahoma City when I was in college. I started at Oklahoma University. And fascinating, but that was one of the few in the entire world. Now, radar now is it's at the tip of our fingers. We all have it on our phones. And so that kind of stuff, to me, that's the biggest advancement in meteorology since I've been doing my thing.
Well, in your job, and everyone, you're in a type job where everyone gets to see you on a daily basis, and you get judged every single day.
You bet. Everybody knows me really well
on your performance. And even when I do our quick check of the weather, by the way, I need you to be accurate, because then I screw up.
Right.
And I screw up and they blame me.
Yeah.
So how mad have people gotten at you over the years about a weather report that you didn't quite nail?
Oh, there's a lot of anger out there. And sometimes it's not the weather. Sometimes they don't like my tie or my hair, which is there's not much of anymore. So it ranges, and there is uncertainty in what we do in our job, and that's just a given. That's going to happen. The one line I hear all the time, of course, is, gosh, I wish I could have a job where I could be wrong and still get paid. I'm like, well, we're always taking applications. Yeah. It's all about job choice.
Yeah, just see if you really like to do it.
Yeah. And actually, my line on that typically is, you're either jealous or you're really unhappy in your own career. Yeah. But that's another story. I try not to be that kind of person, but to reply like that. But it depends on who I'm talking to. But
and how far they've taken it.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So and my job is so much more beyond a simple forecast of the weather. And what I learned early on in my career was I could hopefully affect or impact where I live, and I feel like I've done that. I can do that. And that, to me, has become every bit as important a part of my job as forecasting the weather. I mean, I love being in the community. I love talking to people. I love telling stories. I love telling their stories. They're not always just weather. And I've been able to develop platforms that early on in my career I never would have thought about. But I quickly realized in my career that I can make a difference in my community. Now, I'm not overstating it. There's a lot of people that do a lot of great stuff in their community and whatnot, but the job is a lot more, and there's a lot of hours. I start at 7 in the morning on radio in Jacksonville from home. I go to home studio. I get home at midnight from my TV job. So they're short nights. If I've got a gig where I'm going out to talk or speak or to help raise money for a nonprofit, for example, that's in the middle of the day a lot of times, or sometimes it's in the evening. So there's a lot more than just forecasting the weather. But yeah, I've had some pretty upset viewers and listeners at times. And it's a part, and we try to emphasize the uncertainty in those kinds of forecasts when that situation arises, because there are times when it's far more uncertain than other times. This week's a simple one, which is great. A lot of sunshine each and every day.
We like simple ones.
I love simple too. Which is a funny point to make too. A lot of people are like, oh, well, it's storming. There's a storm coming. You guys must be really happy. And I'm like, oh, no, I much prefer a sunny week.
Yeah.
I get nothing out of a stormy week. I much prefer.
You get less sleep.
I get less sleep. And sure, it can drive viewers to our, but I'm way past that in my career.
Yeah.
And I'd like to think that I never was that way to begin with. And I've always been really careful, along with our entire staff, to not cry wolf in a storm setup, in a situation. And I've given thousands of forecasts in my career, and there's a very small handful of those where people have really had to take action to protect themselves. It happens, but it's not common.
Yeah.
Oh, just about sneeze there.
Yeah, you're allowed to sneeze. That's Amanda's microphone. So your hours are so sporadic and stuff like that. And I have crazy hours too. And it's tough on the family
right.
with doing that. How do you make that balance? And how does your wife manage that? Because, I mean, there's an old saying about coaches, because coaches have those crazy hours too. Yeah. Like coaches' wives get into heaven first. So I think, I think weathermen's wives are probably in that same category.
Exactly. If they stick with them.
Yeah. And there's no prediction on that.
No.
But how do you manage that and still make that time? Because it's like almost jumping in, you know, I'll have a long day, and then we have a 5-year-old, and I'm coming home, and she doesn't care whether or not I work 14 hours.
Exactly.
And I'm trying to focus on giving her the time that she deserves too.
Great question.
Yeah. And
I'll admit, in my old age, that I think about that a lot more than I ever used to as I head toward the sunset of my career. And not only how I did it, but more importantly, did I do it right? And I am my own best critic. And I don't think I did it right every single time. But I do. I coached some of my kids' teams in basketball, particularly. My wife did a lot of soccer coaching. And I look back, and sometimes I don't even know how I did it, but I would get a dinner hour typically, you know, after off the air at 6:30 or 7 o'clock in the evening. I would have dinner hour till maybe 9 o'clock, and then we're back on the air at 10 o'clock. So I would run off to practice or a game, whatever the case was, watch it, coach it, or whatever it was that I was going to do in that particular sport. And then I'd run back to the station, and I'd work, and then I'd go home for a little while, sleep, and then up the next morning and start the whole thing again. And on weekends, if it was travel, which a lot of times travel soccer with both of my daughters, you know, my wife would try to get one to one place. I might get the other one to another place. I might have to still work at the same time. And, you know, 25 to 30 years ago, it wasn't as easy to work remotely as it is now. So that played a part of it. And so it is a delicate balance. And you know, nowadays, work-life balance is talked about a lot. I always say work hard, play hard. And I think I did, and I thought I didn't. And it wasn't always the right mix, and it wasn't always perfect, but I tried really hard. I was home as much as I could be. I was really big about tucking my kids into bed, and that was one of the things about
it's a super important thing.
Yeah. It was one of the things I could do on my shift, because having that little dinner hour between 7 and 9 p.m., well, that was perfect for getting home, quick dinner.
And you're out.
Read them their bedtime story. They always liked me to tell bedtime stories, so I'd make up a bedtime story. I'll never forget it. We said our prayers, and it was the most critical time of it as being a dad, and you learn so much in that little period about them, what happened at their day, and they're not thinking that they're telling you everything, but they are.
Yeah.
And that to me was critical, and I was able to do that virtually every night until they became teenagers, and then they weren't home, and it didn't matter as much.
Yeah.
But I don't want to preach, but I'm not. But on this life work balance, some people think it means don't work.
Yeah.
Doesn't work that way. Just in.
Yeah.
Doesn't work that way.
So it rarely can work that way.
No, it really doesn't.
You still have to be the provider. You still have to bring home and pay those bills.
And find a job you love then, so it doesn't feel like work so much. I feel like since COVID, the life work balance has become, I'm just going to not work. And now suddenly people are realizing, oh, wait a minute, I can't pay the bills if I don't work, or I can't go travel, or I can't have a vacation.
Yeah.
So it's at a critical balance, and it's not an easy one. But just not working is not the answer.
Yeah, no, and I'm fortunate. Blake's with me every day, and so my youngest son's at the house, and we really try and make sure that we did that. And I didn't think I did a great job early on.
Yeah.
But when I left the county, my jobs became very flexible, so I can shift
That
around
helps. Yeah.
and make that happen. But I still tried to make that time. Like you said, as you get older, that's like, okay. And now I have a little one again. So it's like, all right, I'm going to do better by this one. But, I hope, Blake, did I do okay?
Yeah.
Hopefully I did. Hopefully I did.
So
I've asked, it's funny. You find out when later in life, as they get older, like Blake is, they'll come up with little things that you said or taught them that you didn't think sunk in at all.
Yeah.
That's when you're like, oh, they were listening. It doesn't happen a lot, but every once in a while, I had.
It gives you that twinkle of like, okay.
Yes, it wasn't a complete failure.
I didn't get everything right, but I got that right.
Yeah. It's funny.
All right, so we're coming. Hurricane season is getting closer to the end than it was the beginning.
Yep.
When we talked last, you said your moment of when you feel more comfortable about hurricane season coming to an end is about the time we're at right now.
Right, about October 20th.
About October 20th. So
for us locally.
Yeah, we're a week earlier than where we're at. This hurricane season seems to be not as active as far as landfall, but it seems very active out in the Atlantic.
Yep.
And we've had a couple of good seasons, and we want to keep that here in St. Augustine and Jacksonville, in the 904.
You bet.
What do you think the lack of hurricanes this season? Was there something different that happened this season that didn't happen other seasons?
Yeah, it was awesome. And remember, like you said, we're on the L name now. Lorenzo was just upgraded to a tropical storm this morning, way out over the Atlantic. It's not a problem for us. But we had a very active upper level trough, a dip in the jet stream over the eastern part of the U.S. And that was our protector, quite literally, for not only Jacksonville and St. Johns County and St. Augustine, but all of the eastern seaboard. And so storms that were trying to develop or did develop basically got ricocheted out to the east, out over the Atlantic, and that's been our protector. And as long as we can keep that dip in the jet stream over the eastern U.S., it's difficult. Certainly, Atlantic storms will have a very difficult time getting to us in this kind of weather setup. What we have to watch for is something that might try to come out of the Gulf or the Caribbean, especially later in the season. So that's not unusual.
Instead of coming out of Africa from the south side.
We're done with our Africa season this year. And so we'll watch. In fact, I'm pretty sure, let's see, this is the 13th, so probably between about the 22nd and 27th of October, so the last week of October, we're going to have something brewing in the Caribbean. So that'll be one we watch, but we're also getting late enough in the year now, late in October, where even a Caribbean system for Northeast Florida, it's hard to get all the way up to Northeast Florida because the jet stream is becoming more active, dipping more south. Now, South Florida and the Panhandle, that's a whole different ballgame. So I suspect, and Melissa's the next name on the list, I think we're going to have something in the Caribbean the last week of October. But we'll see how that behaves and where it goes. And Nicole was an enigma of sorts in 2022, 3 years ago. That was a November hurricane, Cat 1, that hit south of St. Augustine, but then moved to the northwest, gave us a lot of rain and wind and again off the Atlantic. And so that can happen, has happened, very rare. I always like to see us get to about October 20th, and then I feel like we're usually generally pretty good shape.
All right. Earlier in the conversation, you talked about doing different charities and stuff like that. Is there a charity that you have kind of attached yourself to and your family's attached yourself to?
Yeah.
Our family's attached to Home Again and autism.
Yeah.
But I mean, and a lot of people that do what we do here, get attached to different charities. Is there one that really is close to your heart? Yes.
Salvation Army is what I attached to here in Jacksonville early on. And the reason why, quite honestly, was natural disasters, which isn't surprising. Yeah, and so when I was in Cincinnati, it was my last couple of years there, we had a big tornado in the early morning hours. It was before sunrise. Devastated the northeast part of Cincinnati. Several people lost their lives. Devastating in my career, actually. When that kind of thing happens, we take it, people think we just move on to the next thing or whatever, or we don't care. That's not at all true. When that kind of thing happens, it's difficult to get through. Any case, I was sent out after covering the tornado. We were tracking it on radar early in the morning, me and the morning meteorologist, wall to wall, never went off the air. And then finally at about 5:30 in the morning, we had confirmed damage, and once the tornado storms had left the viewing area, they sent me out to cover it live. And so I went live all day. And about I'll never forget, about 1 in the afternoon, I just sat on the curb. I hadn't had anything. I didn't take anything with me. I had a T-shirt on and blue jeans because I'd come in and it was early morning, off the cuff, and I didn't take anything with me. I had no water. I had no food, nothing. And I'll be darned if a Salvation Army guy, probably was the major, it was somebody in the Salvation Army back then, so this has been late 1990s, came up to me and offered me, I can't remember exactly what he offered me. He's probably a water and a snack. I don't know. And I thought it was, first of all, I thought it was a kind gesture, but I declined it. I said, you're here for the survivors of this disaster. I'm going to go home tonight and sleep comfortably and have electricity and food. I'm okay. And he came back about a half hour to an hour later, and he insisted. And I was like, if you don't mind, I'd love to have something. At that point, it was 2 or 3 in the afternoon. I'd been going for 12 plus hours. And they were the first people I saw to come help. Before the Red Cross, before any other agencies or nonprofits were there, it was the Salvation Army. And that always stuck with me. So then when I got to Cincinnati, I was doing Empty Bowls Luncheon, I'm pretty sure it was, at the Prime Osborne. I'd only been here maybe a year. And right next to me was the major of the Salvation Army from Jacksonville. And I got to chatting with him, and I said, hey, you guys do great work. I told him about this experience that I had in Cincinnati. And then I told him also, I said, I also would like to set up some kind of thing in the station where we take part in whatever you guys do on a regular basis. And he mentioned that they do a lot of Christmas activities. And I said, well, that sounds great. So we started to adopt families that they would pre-screen. And as a station, we'd all buy their gifts. And we didn't tell the station, the families that we were coming until we arrived. And then we'd knock on the door and we'd hand over all these gifts to people that otherwise, in many cases, they had nothing. And in some cases, they might have had a very small amount of something. And for the first 5 or 6 years of this, we didn't record it. We didn't do it for show or anything. We didn't have any cameras there. Now we have cameras there, and it's a thing. But that started 25 years ago or so, almost 25 years ago. And then we also are the media sponsor for Angel Tree, which is for young kids that would have nothing otherwise. And you take the Angel Tree tag from the tree and get those kids those gifts, and we're the media sponsor for that as well. So I've been part of the Salvation Army Advisory Board. I was at one point, I was their chairman, and now I'm an emeritus member, which gets back to the old thing. It means I'm old. Yeah,
that means you got some weeks in.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And that's the organization I've attached to. They are also, and what I'll say time and time again, they are willing to give an upper hand, no matter who you are, what you do, what you believe, or what color you are. It doesn't matter. Yeah. And if it did, I wouldn't be around. Yeah. And they are a faith-based organization. And but they're not.
Our Salvation Army here actually has the church inside.
Right.
They have a sanctuary inside.
Right. But they're not faith first. Some people find that
everyone's
appalling. Yeah. Some love it. Personally, I love it. If we can help somebody, it shouldn't matter. And you know what? They may in the end then gravitate toward the church. And that's awesome. That's great. But they'll do it naturally. And it'll feel deep to them, and they'll stay attached to it, and it'll be meaningful. It's not like you bang them over the head with it and then said, oh, and now we'll help you. Yeah. And I love that approach, and I think that's really critical. And a second one, if I may, real quick, is Jacksonville's PanCan, Pancreatic Cancer Organization. My mother passed away from pancreatic cancer 18 years ago or so. It was only a 9-month battle. And so I've become very active with them. It's not a club or an organization anybody wants to be a part of or a member of, but it's been very meaningful for me. Yeah. And I feel like we've made a big difference. And pancreatic cancer is the #1 cancer killer. One of the.
It's so fast.
Yeah, it's fast. It's hard to detect. And I learned a lot from my mom that last 9 months in so many ways. And I have a blog posting about it, by the way. If you just Google Buresh blog, Mother's Journey, probably will come up. I'm almost certain it'll come up, and it's a long one. It's It's a long read, but I was never going to post it, but I was convinced by a best friend to do it, and I did, and I'm glad I did. And so I've been with the
That was probably healing for you to write it. Too,
it was
let you kind of go, okay, let me get this out so I can let go of it a little bit. So,
and I wrote almost every day something, so it's very detailed, and it goes. And where it's even helped me more recently is it helps me remember stuff. I hate to think that I would forget, but I do. You do as you get older, or just because it's 18 years removed. But you forget about some of the people that came into your life during that. And I have some remarkable stories from that 9 months.
Well, I mean, have you read Tuesdays with Morrie?
Oh yeah.
So,
yeah.
I mean, it's your version. It's your version of Tuesdays with Morrie, but it's a little closer.
Yeah.
And and if so I will have to check it because that's one of my very favorite books. And
it is. That's an awesome book. I learned crazy stuff from my mom and dad at 40 plus years old. You think you know everything, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was an amazing period in my life.
Pancreatic, so
it's tough.
It's one that once it grabs you, it becomes a challenge.
It is, and it's odd. I've often said and still do and always will that Mom's greatest gift was her last 9 months of her life to me, and it was, and it is. I learned a lot.
And we do have 2 questions here for Mike today. First question came from Rebecca. Is how's it feel not to wear a suit this morning?
It's very comfortable. I appreciate that, Troy. It's nice. That's funny, Rebecca. Every time I get back from a vacation, I was telling my wife just the other day. I was like, when I put on a dress shirt, I'm like, oh, it just suffocates you. But I don't mind it either. There's a certain point of it that I have 140 ties to choose from. So
and I threw out all my ties when I left the county. And
That's funny.
And I think I've worn a tie like maybe 8 times in the last 12 years.
So it feels very comfortable and nice in this setting, no doubt.
Good. And the second question actually, so Bobby, so after you guys talked about the hurricane season, Bobby mentioned like jokingly that's like the chemtrails might have protected this year. I want your thoughts as a meteorologist about the Florida law that was passed on July 1st, SB 56 that protects Florida from weather modification. What's your thoughts about that as a meteorologist?
Good question, and that's opening up a can of worms right there. You might as well be talking climate change. First of all, there's no large-scale weather modification being done in Florida. So I will say most succinctly is what's next? Are we going to outlaw Santa's sleigh? I feel like that's the vein of this bill. And I did do a blog post on this. And again, if you just, I post my blog once a week, Buresh blog, but I also have Talking the Tropics with Mike that I update every single day during the hurricane season. But if you go to Buresh blog, weather modification, it'll pop up, and I give a long explanation of what's going on in weather modification and what's not, and what's real and what's not. Yes, weather modification experiments and some weather modification efforts have been done since the 1950s in the United States and still are to this day to a point. But you cannot turn a hurricane from the United States or draw it to the United States. You're not talking about massive, large-scale changes. It's too complicated. And as far as cloud seeding goes, remember that first you have to have a cloud to seed it. So the jets aren't creating clouds. Point number one. And then also all indications are that even the best efforts of cloud seeding are not changing the production of the cloud by more than 10 to perhaps 20%. So 1 inch of rain on a good day, if a cloud's been seeded, could become 1.2 inches of rain.
On the very best scenario.
It's kind of like spitting in the ocean, in other words. Now, having said that, I personally feel like we ought to let Mother Nature do her thing. We probably ought not mess with Mother Nature because it's going to come back to haunt us. So that's my take on it in 2 minutes or less. It's a complicated, and again, for whatever reason, a political hot potato, but educate yourself on it, just like climate change. Understand it. Don't go just listen to one side or a soundbite. Listen to the facts. Science isn't perfect, but that's what science is. It's hypothesis, and then you prove it right or wrong. We've done that forever. That's how we've made advances like we have.
That's why we're not using leeches.
So, right. So weather is or science is very real and important. And I just real quickly, common sense is something that's been brought up recently a lot, that, common sense it was lost, and we need to bring that back. And I understand that, and I get it. And I think that was a really good idea originally. But what I'm finding now, Troy, is that some people are not able to separate common sense from things that don't make sense, kind of.
Yeah.
Like, so instead of helping to advance things because you're trying to understand it, people are confusing it by it doesn't make sense. So then it must not be real.
It can't, yeah.
But it is.
Yeah.
It exists.
Yeah.
So I think again, I'll say that I think it's over in some circles way overplayed. There's no question about it. There's plenty of information out there. And then I've also posted in the Buresh blog my thoughts on weather modification.
Yeah, Blake, let's make sure we get the Buresh blog in our site and on the app for us.
That'd be awesome.
So that we can get that out